Hello and welcome to Tech Deals. Today, Zotac GeForce GTX 1070 Amp Extreme Edition. Yes, that's a mouthful. Why should you watch this video? Why should you care? Do you want the biggest, baddest looking graphics card in the world? Do you want a huge graphics card that just screams power? Well, you came to the right place, because I have on the desk here the Founders Edition, and I'll be showing them side by side once I have this unboxed so you can see the difference. In terms of the card itself, 60 frame per second, 1440p gaming at ultra max detail all day long with no issues. Multi-monitor 1080p gaming at high detail on 3 screens for NVIDIA Surround, or high refresh rate gaming at 100 to 144 frames a second at either 1080p at high detail or 1440p at medium to high detail. This card will be a beast. It will also game at 4K if you're willing to drop the settings just a little bit. Grand Theft Auto 5, high detail, 4K will get close to 60 frames a second average, so you certainly have that available as an option. Overclocking, this has the biggest, baddest cooler on it of any 1070 card I'll be looking at. If you want to overclock your system, if you want to go crazy, this definitely might be worth taking a look at, because this thing is a beast. So, throughout the course of this video, I will be putting performance numbers up here. Note, these performance numbers are not off this card. So why are they there? Because I'm not going to rerun every test in every game on every single 1070 I do. That would be a bit much. This gives you a starting point. Those numbers are off the EVGA 1070 superclocked card. This should go a bit faster if you manually overclock it. You should get at least 2 gigahertz out of this card. It's not guaranteed because every card's going to be different. It depends on your case and your cooling and everything, but it certainly has the cooler and certainly has the power delivery system to get over 2 gigahertz in boost mode if you want to. Just use their provided software and you'll be able to set it. So these numbers may actually be slower than you could get out of this card. And it's not even that expensive. How much? $470. It's $20 more than the Founders Edition. It's $30 more than the Amp Edition or the Superclocked Edition, which these numbers are based off of. So it's less than 10% increase for the biggest, baddest cooler in the world. If you just want the biggest, baddest cooler in the world, here you go. Now, as far as performance increases from the previous generation, here's something I would like to, let me cut, there we go. The 1070 is a massive increase over the 970. If you have a 970 in your system, normally in the PC business, in the computer technology business, you want to wait a couple of product generations before upgrading to get enough of a change to make it worth the trouble. If you have a 970 and you play at 1440p with everything set to very high, in Grand Theft Auto 5, you're going to be getting around 35 to 38 frames a second, depending on your card. This may very well hit 70 frames a second. The Superclock does 65. You may very well get 70 frames a second at very high detail. It's almost double what the average 970 will do. And of course, if you have an older card, such as one of the older 770s or maybe a 7000 series from AMD, the performance difference is night and day. It's 80+% faster than just the last generation, which was just being sold a few months ago. It's a huge increase. I very much like what NVIDIA has done with the whole 1000 series line. It is a massive improvement. I will be doing a comparison at some point, perhaps even live demos of a 970 versus a 1070, because it's such a huge difference. I think it's worth showing. This is a huge box. Now, in case you're wondering why this is a 1070 and not a 1080 Amp Edition Extreme, part of its cost. I didn't get any of these as samples. I bought all of these cards, and so buying all the cards in a 1070 costs less. The other reasoning is I wanted to go wide on one type of card. If you've been watching my channel at all, and if you haven't, please subscribe. But if you've been watching my channel, I've done a number of 1070 unboxings. What I decided to do was to go wide on the 1070s and get MSI and Gigabyte and EVGA and Zotac and do a bunch of different cards and talk about the pros and cons of each. Largely, it's aesthetics and personal preference. They're all really, really fast. I have done 2 1080s, but I'm probably only going to do two 1080s. I don't think I'll do any more because those are expensive cards. And I do have to buy all these. Now, I do sell most of them. I'm not going to keep all of these cards. Driver CD and a sticker for the front of your case. It's a very thin sticker, too. It doesn't have that little metal plate, but there's a sticker in there if you care about such things, and a quick installation guide, and a piece of styrofoam. I know it's exciting. What can I say? Adapter cables. These are 6-pin to 8-pin PCI Express adapter cables. If you have a power supply that has 4 6-pin PCI Express adapters, cables coming out of the power supply, these will convert them to 2 8-pin connectors. In fairness, if you're going to spend $470 on a video card and you have a power supply that does not have 2 8-pin PCI Express power connectors, replace your power supply. At this level, there's no reason not to. For less than $50, you can get a very good quality 80+ bronze certified 600-watt power supply from EVGA that has all the power connectors you could ever want. There's just no reason to mess around with inappropriate power supplies at this level, in my opinion. Inside the box is basically styrofoam and the card. It's not particularly fancy, but it just shows you what you get in the package. It's like Christmas. What? That's nuts. Is there anything else in here? No. Let me close this up. Keep my work area organized. Now this card does have LED lighting, but it is not RGB. I did a 1070 for the win card from EVGA that has full 16.7 million colors. The MSI card has RGB lighting. This, you can pick 7 different colors. So it's not full RGB. Shame on you, Zotac. It should be. But if you don't care about lighting, then it doesn't matter. This is huge. Wow. Holy smokes. Size. Take a look at the size difference between a Founders Edition, the reference card, and this. This is tremendously, look how thick that is. It is, I guess, a 2.5 wide. Really, you'll need 3 slots for this. Now, there's a sticker on here, and it basically says remove this first. It has freeze tech. What does that mean? What it means is the fans do not spin unless you actually have a load on the card. This is completely silent. So if you put this in your machine and you're in Windows or potentially even doing light gaming such as League of Legends or Minecraft, these fans still may not spin at all. It'll be a 100% totally silent card. It'll only be like playing Grand Theft Auto 5 or Fallout 4 or Overwatch where the fans will spin. But because there are 3 of them and because the heatsink is so big, the heatsink is a full 2 slots width. Two slots worth. The heatsink is thicker than on most of the other cards. So the fans may be able to spin slower, and so it may be cooler. Obviously, I haven't tested it, I just opened it, but it is a possibility. In terms of overall aesthetics, it's basically a black and silver design. These here are the LED lights. Now, the Zotac logo lights up here, and when the card's installed in your machine, you'll be able to see the Zotac logo here, one of the 7 different colors you can pick. And then on the back of the card, the push the limit logo does light up as well, and you'll notice there's white. Well, this is not sticker, this is silk screener built into it. You can't remove it, so hopefully you like, I said white, yellow. This yellow here, hopefully you like yellow. Maybe you're building a Fallout 4 style themed build, and then there's a little power boost chip here that just looks fancy. But that is what's going to be on the card. So when you install it in your computer, and this is facing upwards, that's what you're going to see. Again, as I said, the push the limit logo lights up. You've got your SLI connectors up here. You can run 2 of these in SLI, although you would need a monster system and a monster board to support 2 of these because of the width and to make sure they get enough cooling. If I was going to SLI, I would be strongly tempted to use a different card that wasn't a more than 2 slot, because even if you have 3 slot spacing in your board, which many boards now provide, you're going to have very little room between the 2 cards, especially considering that this has a backplate. Now, because it's 2.5 and not full 3, it will fit, but there won't be a lot of space. The top card will be hotter. If you're going to SLI, I'd be happier with, like, say, 2 Superclocked or 2 For the Win editions or 2 MSI Gaming X's just because of width-wise. But if you got 1 card and you want the biggest, look at this. This is nuts. It actually makes the Founders card look tiny. Look how thick that is. Let me hold that up so you can see it against the white backdrop. It is absolutely... Now, here's what's interesting. Weight-wise, it weighs less than I thought it would. It's heavier than the Founders. Now, I'm not putting them on a scale. I'm just kind of getting an idea. It's not as heavy as it looks. So in terms of installing it in your motherboard, if you've got a good name brand motherboard, which is all you should be putting in, if you've got an MSI or a Gigabyte or an Asus motherboard, you should be fine. It's heavier, but it's not as heavy as I thought it might be. Wow, take a look at that. And of course it stands up perfectly. There's no issues with it standing up because it's a 2.5 wide slot card. That is a beast. Ports. I need to mention the ports. I mentioned this before, 2 8-pin PCI Express power connectors. It doesn't really need them because that means the card gets a total delivery of up to 375 watts, which it will never ever use. You'll be hard pressed to get 250 watts pulling through this card. You have got DVI-D, DisplayPort, and HDMI ports up here. Note the DVI-D is a DVI-D, not a DVI-I. It no longer provides the analog interface necessary to use the small cheap D-sub adapters, but I can't imagine anybody spending $470 on a card still using a VGA monitor, but if you want to, note that you can't do that anymore with those cheap adapters. Digital only now. There are active adapters you can plug into a DisplayPort, for example, and get VGA, but those cost more. That's a separate thing. There is one HDMI 2.0 port here. It's a 2.0B port, 4K, 60 hertz support, and then 3 DisplayPort 1.4s. Those support 4K at up to 120 hertz, which don't exist yet, but it's nice to have the support for the future. Do I think most people should buy this card? No, I actually don't. Why? It's huge, it's heavy, it does cost more than the average 1070, and to be honest, from everything I've read, while you can probably overclock this higher than most 1070s, you're talking about a couple of frames per second difference between overclocking some of the less expensive cards. If you like Zotac and you like the amp design and the fan design, consider the amp edition. It's $30 less expensive. Instead of $270, it's $240. It has 2 fans instead of 3. It's a 2 wide slot card instead of a 2.5 wide slot. It's a little bit shorter. It will fit into more machines. It does still have the 2 8-pin PCI Express connectors on the amp edition, not the amp Extreme. So it still has the better power delivery system. You can still overclock it. It's going to get really close to this while being shorter, thinner, and easier to install in more machines while being $30, about 8% less expensive. So my personal recommendation is to buy the amp edition, not the amp Extreme edition. The person who should buy this is probably the person who goes, I just want a bad looking video card. I just want the coolest looking, most amazing video card. I want something that really stands out and says, I'm powerful. Fair enough. That's the amp Extreme edition. That's what it's for. If you want that, if you like the design of it, if you just think it looks cool and you go, you know, for 30 bucks, I like the bigger fans, knock yourself out. Really, I mean, it's fine. Links to this card and to the one I do recommend, which is the amp edition, same basic style, but 2 fans shorter, will be in the description below. Both are in stock at both Amazon and Newegg as of the first week of August. They've been in stock for about a week now. Supplies of the 1070 have caught up to demand, so make sure you don't overpay for those. $440 for the amp edition, $470 for the amp Extreme edition. Links to both Amazon and Newegg for both of those cards will be in the description below, as well as my other YouTube reviews of the other cards, including the Founders Edition, EVGA, MSI, etc. So did you like this video? Click like. Did you not? Well, you know what to do. Remember to subscribe to my channel. It's the big, huge red button right down there. Subscribe to get updates to future videos, including live performance videos of these cards. I'm going to be putting them in here and actually playing games. It's one thing to tell you that these things will get you 60 to 70 frames a second at very high detail at 1440p in Grand Theft Auto 5. It's another thing to show you with a live demo to where you can see, is it smooth? Is it playable? How are the frame rate dips? What's the minimum frame rate? Is there any issues with controlling your character? As I've shown you in other videos if you've been watching my channel, and if you haven't, click that subscribe button. Sometimes the frame rate looks good. Sometimes you can get a frame rate that'll be 50 to 55 frames a second, but the game's not playable because you don't have enough horsepower. I have shown that in prior videos. Fallout 4 is a good example of one where I got over 50 frames a second on lesser hardware, but the game was very, very laggy. Upgrade the hardware, lower the resolution, it plays much better. That's why I do them. Leave your questions, comments, thoughts, feedback, suggestions below the video description below. Let me know what you think. Do you prefer Zotac as a brand? I think they've come a long way in recent years, but what do you think? Do you prefer something else? MSI, EVGA, take your pick. And of course, as always, if you like my videos, if you found this informative or helpful, if you find all the videos on my channel helpful, please consider using the links in the video description below. They will support me, and that's the best way you can get me keep making these videos. I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.